I was stalked by a schizophrenic man and his drug addict brother. This happened to me over a year ago, at the end of March 2017, and I still can't be left alone in my own home. 3 years earlier, I had moved into a house that my grandparents left me before they passed away. I had spent some time there renovating and was happy enough with it to move in. My grandparents had rented out the top floor to students and had made it into a small apartment. When I moved in, I decided to let my cousin, who had some small personal problems, move in upstairs, while my fiance and I used the two remaining floors for ourselves. We live in a small town, and like all small towns, everyone basically knows everyone, and like most men in our town, my fiance is a fisherman, and goes away for long periods of time during the winter, sometimes from January to May. In our town, there are two brothers that are, well, I guess you can call them weird. Some may say original, though we all know they had struggles in the past that probably is the reason behind their behavior. But my path never crossed their path, and I never talked to them. Mostly because of age difference, I believe. This particular night, I was home alone, and my fiance was up north fishing, and my cousin was visiting family. I had come home late from work and was chilling with a glass of wine in front of the TV. I can't remember what was on. I usually just need to empty my head after work, so I was just sitting there in the dark with nothing but the light from the TV, lost in my own thoughts after a long evening shift. That's when I thought I heard someone outside. Usually when I hear sounds like that, I brush it off. I live in an old house. Old houses make sounds randomly, and the rain was pouring down outside. Only once it had happened when it was actually someone out there, and that time it had been an East European group of guys scouting out our house. Since some groups like that like to travel around to small places and do burglary and petty crimes, I had this in mind, but I had not been home at the point. Only my fiance and cousin was, and I ran after them, and the men jumped in their car and we never saw them again. I told myself the sound I had just heard was either the house or the rain, till I heard another sound again, more clearly this time. This time it came from the deck on the other side of the house that I sat. I froze as I heard steps moving closer to the window where I sat. The first window this person would come to, moving from that side of the house, would be my bedroom. He or she wouldn't see anything inside there. The curtains were down and the lights were off. The steps kept moving towards the door we had on that side of the house, and I knew once they got there, they would be able to stare directly at me through the door window. I quickly turned off the TV so the room got dark. By doing this, I would for sure be telling them that I was at home. Unless they came from the forest behind the house, which means they had to climb and crawl a lot, they would have seen that the TV was on from the front of the house. To give you an idea of how my floor plan is, my house is built so that from the front, you see the kitchen through two windows and the living room through one. Moving around the house to the back, you have windows to the bathroom, bedroom, and the door to the living room. And on one side, you have a couple of big windows to the living room, and on the opposite side, the entrance to the hall. And all around the ground floor, we have a deck. So I sat still, my heart beating fast. I could barely breathe while I was hearing the footsteps, now slower, come closer to the door. The wood on the deck making sounds as the weight of the person pushed down on it. That's when I see a big shadow of a man outside the window stopping and looking in. I stayed in the chair I was sitting in, hoping it was dark enough that he wouldn't see me. As he started moving again, I grasped for air. I could hear him walking into my outdoor furniture and stopping. He probably didn't see them in the dark. For a split second, I debated with myself if I should go and turn on the deck lights, but I didn't want him to know that I had seen him. Scared of what this person could do. I lived in a small town in one of the most baby-proofed countries in the world. These things were not supposed to happen here. Well, at least I had felt safe up until then. Could have been someone pranking me, thinking that they were hilarious, but I was not willing to take that chance. I grabbed my phone and ran as quickly as I could out to the kitchen and hid under the open counter area. I knew he wouldn't be able to spot me there from any window if I sat still. I quickly started dialing my dad's number, figuring it was either him or my brother who could come to help me fast enough. We share police with a neighboring town. They aren't usually stationed there, which means it would take them at least 35 minutes to get to me. Though it was late, my dad was quick to pick up, figuring I wouldn't call him that late if it wasn't important. He told me that later. I whispered quickly in the phone, so fast and with such a low voice my dad couldn't hear me and I had to repeat myself. There's someone outside the house. He just looked through the window. As I said it the second time, I couldn't hold back my tears and I started sobbing. My dad had told me to stay put and he would be on his way. He hung up, and I can remember how I had wished he hadn't done that. I would have felt safer had he stayed on the line, but I would soon find out why he had hung up. I tried to call my fiance, straight to voicemail, and again straight to voicemail. I stared at my phone, hoping someone would call to try to keep out the sound of the footsteps that I could hear coming closer to the kitchen. Then absolute silence. I'd held my breath listening, but I could only hear my own heartbeats. Had he jumped off the deck to the side where it was the closest to the ground? I waited before I crawled out and carefully peeked out one of the kitchen windows. I spotted him walking slowly away from the house and down my driveway. Then he stopped, turned around looking towards the window where I was sitting. Was he smiling? I couldn't tell because it was so dark and the streetlight were not enough for me to see him clearly, but I could have swore he was smiling at me. At the same time, my driveway got lit up with lights from a car, and I could just see who he was before he ran into the neighbor's driveway and disappeared behind some bushes. I jumped up when I realized whose car it was, my dad's business partner, John. I ran out towards him. My dad had called him and asked him to go to my house because he was closer. I had never been happier to see him. I quickly told him who I had seen, and he assured me that my dad was only minutes away before he jumped in his car to pursue the man. The man I had seen had been one of these brothers that we all find weird. The one known to be a schizophrenic drug addict. But why had he been outside my house? He was not known to burglarize people's homes. My dad came and called the police, who came and took my statement. John came back and said he had not been able to spot him, that he probably ran into the forest on the other side of my neighbor's house. The police couldn't arrest the guy since he hadn't done anything. Scaring the living shit out of someone was not big enough of a crime, but they know who he was and had promised to talk to him and tell him to stop scaring people. As for me, they told me to call them if he ever did it again. I didn't stick around to see if he came back later that night. I packed some things and stayed over at my parents' house until my cousin came home 2 days later. Sadly, this was just the beginning of something that would last for 3, almost 4 months.